Welcome to the House of Hoosier podcast. I'm your host, AJ Guyton, and I got a very special guest. You all know him as he's donning the IU hat today, so we definitely got to dive into that. One of college basketball's best insiders, Mr. Jeff Goodman. How you doing, my man?
I'm good. All's well. Just getting to the heart of back when you played. This is like the heart of the season. This is when it matters for so many teams, whether it's fighting for number one seeds, whether it's fighting, for seeding for the conference tournament or to get in the tournament. So many teams playing for so much as you get to like mid to late February.
Right. Before we dive into that, we got to get this backstory on this. I know your head is on fire right now, so so you can take it off. Let's talk about what was the message behind the Indiana hat that you have on, because we know about the relationship between Mr. Goodman and the fan base. So I want you to talk about how that relationship got to where it is today, and what's the significance of the hat?
I don't know how it got to where it is completely, because I think it started when I said that there was no chance that Brad Stevens was coming to Indiana. I think that's when it started. And fans and other people, I think like Mark Titus, I think some fans really believed that was a possibility. So I had to legitimately, I remember I was at the NCAA tournament in Indy for 3 weeks last year, and I've known Brad forever. I mean, since he was an assistant at Butler, and I'm from Boston. So again, my relationship with Brad goes back a while and is current. And I had to go on, I think it was after a Celtics game or before, some sort of media availability. I had to go on a Zoom and legitimately ask Brad Stevens, hey, what's your level of interest in whether it's Indiana or coaching? And he basically said, I'm a masshole. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying in Boston. And he did, just not in a coaching capacity. So it started there. Okay. And I'm actually dropping a story probably by the time this pod will be out. There'll be a story that will drop about former NBA players who have played over 200 NBA games in their career, who have been Division I head college coaches. All right. So AJ, the track record is not good. And that's all I was saying with Mike Woodson. It wasn't a slight on him personally. In fact, I love Mike Woodson as a guy. Everybody loves Mike Woodson as a guy. I root for him to succeed. It was more the track record. Well, whether it's, the Chris Mullins, the Clyde Drexlers, the Mark Prices, and then currently Patrick Ewing, Penny Hardaway, Jerry Stackhouse, Fred Hoiberg 2.0, which has been disastrous at Nebraska. A lot of these guys, and now Woody's a little different, because a lot of the guys, if you really break it down, it's the guys who made like over $25 million in their career. Most of those guys, other than Juwan Howard right now, is doing well. Damon Stoudemire made $100 million, and he did a great job when he was at Pacific, but he grinded it out. Like, he was an assistant at Memphis, at Arizona. He actually did player development for a year at Rice University. So he was a little different. There's a lot of factors involved, but one of those factors is knowing the college landscape, right? And Woody came in and he didn't. He's been in the NBA forever. So his staff was going to be ultra important. And I think he hired a pretty good staff. So that kind of goes back to where, yes, I was critical of the hire. I would have hired a guy that was probably more entrenched already in college basketball. I understood what they were trying to do. You want to get back to your roots. It didn't work with Arch. I get it. People think I'm like best friends with Arch. I've known Arch a long time. I like him. I felt bad it didn't work there for a multitude of reasons. One was on Arch. Absolutely. Part of it was Arch's fault. I think part of it was Tom Crean's fault. I don't think he left him a whole lot in the cupboard.
Right. So, I mean, I get that. So let me ask you this question: where Indiana stands right now, 7-6 in the league, 16-7. How do you think Mike Woodson has done up to this point?
Well, like, I think he's done a good job. Absolutely. I think he's done a very good job. If you can get this team in the tournament, get in like wherever, I mean, really wherever at this point, because there's not too many teams out there that you're like terrified to play, whether you don't want to play in the 8-9 game. Like, that's my take. You want to stay away from playing a 1 seed in the second round. So as long as you're not in the 8-9, I don't even think, 2 seeds are pretty good for the most part right now. You're talking like the Kentuckys, the Kansases. Probably don't want to see those either. But for the most part, it's about matchups, getting the tournament, win a game. And you know what? It's a step. And they've got some momentum right now. They're winning. They're relevant. Yeah. Have they, they haven't crushed it. But again, without really good point guard play, you're not going to. You're not going to. And X has been good, but he's still inconsistent. You talked to him about it on the pod earlier this year.
Yep.
He's inconsistent. Finney, he'll have some great games. He'll have some not great games. And then he'll have some games where he's hurt. So they've got to solidify that position going forward. But I thought they plugged the holes well enough. He inherited a pretty good team. Pretty good. Not great, but like good enough to compete. And he kept Trace, which was obviously ultra important. And I think Race is ultra important because of the intangibles that he brings to the table. They're older, talented enough, and it's not like the Big Ten, other than Purdue and Illinois, is overpowering this year. You have a chance against every team in the league for the most part at home, and almost every team on the road, other than, to me, Purdue and Illinois.
Right. If you had to start right now, is Indiana in the NCAA tournament, and what seed would you think they have earned to this point?
So I haven't looked at it closely for seeding. I would guess, yes, they're in. I think they're a lock in.
Okay.
I would guess they're somewhere in that like 9-10 range. That again, I haven't looked in the last week. To be completely honest, I just did my top 25. They're not in there. They were in there, a few weeks ago for a minute. I think they're in that next group. And here's what I'll say is, like, Arkansas came completely off the grid in the last month. They've won, I think, 7 straight. They just beat Auburn last night. And you can do that. You can come completely off the grid if you win 3 or 4 in a row. And one or two of those are like ranked teams. And obviously they beat Auburn, right? Like Arkansas's resume was terrible a month ago. Absolutely awful. And it just goes to show you can come out. Oregon was awful earlier this season. Now they're winning. It's a Pac-12. Anybody can win the Pac-12. It stinks. But if you go in a little bit of a run, it's harder to do in the Big 12 and the Big 10 because there's not a lot of gimme games other than Nebraska. Who can you circle and say, hey, even if we play our C game, we're going to win that game? That's probably the only one.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you when you talk about, I not agree with it, but you talk about the track record of, former players coaching. I thought Woody would be a lot different. I was good with the hire. I didn't even have him in my mind. Why was I good with the hire? Because
why would he be different? Why would he be so much different than the other guys?
Because of his experience as a coach, period. And I think I thought he would be smart enough to hire the correct staff with Kenyon Hunter, retaining Kenyon Hunter, getting Dane Fife. Those were the 2 biggest moves.
We can't speak highly of Fife though on this.
Right, absolutely.
That's illegal. It's illegal to speak highly of Fife on. I can't do it.
No. Hey, I'm just gonna say his name. He was on the staff, former player, man, and I think that's what I thought he would do that would catapult him, not go hire his buddies, his best friends and other guys, but guys that really truly understood the landscape. And I think up to this point, it's exactly as I expected. I didn't expect that Indiana was going to just jump into the top 10 and become this because they had Trace coming back. You got Race, they got some experience. I know that in the Big Ten, you need consistent guard play. You need guys that can fill it up. You need guys that can knock. You look at Indiana's greatest teams from 2000 on, you had great backcourts. I mean, you had the whole Jordy Holes, you had Yogi Ferrells, you had, guys that could, on the road, put a team on their back, score 20, 18 points in a row and keep the game close and give them that team a chance to win. I hope that I hope that we would contend. I hope that we will be competitive. I hope that we would withstand home stands, win our home games. And those were the things that are happening for me. I think the next step for Indiana basketball, for me personally, is to get more explosive guard play from the offensive end, put points on the board, get bigger guards that can post, that can do a whole myriad of things that can become NBA prospects down the line. And so that's my question to you. I know you mentioned the guard play as an area of concern. What other things? You look at the Big Ten landscape, you look at Illinois, you look at Purdue. Everybody's looking up at Illinois, Purdue, and Wisconsin right now. And what does Indiana have to do? They got Wisconsin coming in, they got Michigan State coming in. What do they have to do to take that next small step? I don't think that step's going to be a big step, but I think they got another gear in them.
It's probably not, and obviously staying healthy. You can't have all these dudes suspended this time of year, right? I mean, that's a little concerning. It really is. At this point in the year, now I give Woody credit because he held them accountable.
Absolutely.
And that's the type of dude he is. Like, I think he understands, like, in the NBA, it's hard to hold these dudes accountable.
Yeah, right.
But you can't. They're making more money than you. You know, they run the program. Well, in college, you run the program. And I think he knows the impact he can have on these kids, not just his players down the road, but his people. And hold them accountable. I love that about him. He's old school. So many guys would be at this point and say, shit, we need this win against Northwestern so bad. I'm going to overlook it. And I don't know what they did exactly yet. I'll probably dig into that today a little bit, but I'm going to overlook it because we need this win. And he didn't do that. And again, listen, I can't say enough good things about Mike Woodson from what I've heard about him. And the few dealings I've had with him, including going to Bloomington with my daughter. He couldn't have been nicer to her, you know, and we watched practice and I do like his staff a lot. I think that was a game changer for me. A lot of times when a guy is hired, I've kind of learned this. Maybe I didn't do it with Woody, but I've kind of learned it. And I think I even did it when I tweeted something about Woody when he got hired. I even tweeted, I want to see his staff. I don't like the hire unto itself, but I want to see his staff. And I felt like after hiring that staff, you know, keeping Kenya, you know, hiring Fife, bringing in Hoosier, bringing in Thad Matta as just kind of a guy to bounce things off of. Like, that sold me on, all right, the dude, because like Patrick, like Stackhouse hired such a shitty staff, such a bad staff, like hired a high school coach from Memphis. Like, you're not getting anybody. If anybody good is from Memphis, they're staying in Memphis. They're not picking Vandy over Memphis. I'm sorry. So what are you doing? You hired two other guys that are out now. Patrick Ewing didn't hire a good staff. You know, Louis Orr's a great human being, but you can't put him on the road right now recruiting. Make him a special advisor. So anyway, what I'm trying to get at is I think Woody made good, sound decisions with his staff that separated him from a lot of other guys that took over. And a lot of those guys, again, were former players, not former coaches. Like Woody played in the NBA, but that was a long time ago. He's coached for years. So he is a little bit different. I'll give you that. You know, I think, again, you've got a whole serve at home. And you have that home court advantage that frankly, they didn't have last year.
Yeah. The crowd is there.
I mean, like, with all due respect to Arch, and again, I'm the first one to say he did not get it done. I'm not making excuses for him, but what I'm saying is the schools that were hurt the most by the pandemic are obviously the ones with the best home court advantages. The Dukes, the Kansases, the Indianas, the Gonzagas. Those schools, now it didn't hurt Gonzaga because they were that good. Indiana wasn't that good, right? So it really, to me, I think it might have cost them, you know, a game or two at home. I mean, listen, what do you think it is when Assembly Hall is rocking and it's full and they're crazy? What type of point advantage do you think? Like I said last week, I was at Texas Tech, Texas. I thought it was legitimately an 8-point advantage for Texas Tech and Lubbock. Those 4,500 students out of their minds. I honestly thought Texas, when they walked on the court, it was like, oh shit.
Yeah, I felt like that watching, even when I watched the NBA bubble that year, I watched college basketball. I was talking to my friends and talking about the elements. I said the elements of of the fan experience and it's missing. I said it's allowing guys who normally wouldn't play well because they get nervous because of the fan experience play well. The guys are going to be the guys. LeBron's going to be LeBron, AD, whoever. The great players are going to be the great players. But it's those other guys that experience can either help or hurt. And I definitely thought that, with the pandemic, I know Indiana made the field of 68 the year before, and then it was shut down. They had got in. That it's just timing. It just changes the whole trajectory of a coach's career. I mean, Archie would probably still be there if they would have allowed that tournament to happen and the Indiana got in. Might won a couple games, and we're it
would have changed everything.
It would have changed everything. So the fan experience definitely hurt Indiana last year because I couldn't even imagine. It's like practicing in Assembly Hall. It was empty.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have to drum up your own energy.
And it affects the road, the crowd coming in. I mean, the team coming in as well. They're playing against an empty Assembly Hall. They're not used to it either. So I'm not saying it only affected IU, but that's a major home court advantage that I think is worth, I don't know, four points.
Absolutely. I mean, you get the whistle too, because you get pressure from the fans.
You get that whistle. No doubt.
I always said that. I said, if you beat Indiana in a full house back when I was playing, you beat us in there, you are a Final Four basketball team.
Right.
You got the mental, you got the coaching staff preparation, the mental toughness to withstand the whistle, the Bob Knight whistle, and that crowd. So I understand that completely. Let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at Bet Rivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up with Bet Rivers yet, now is the time, because they're offering a $250 match bonus for our first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one play to turn your money into cash money. With their new Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, more secure, and more reliable. With football season kicking off, get in on the action by going to betrivers.com today or by downloading the BetRivers iOS app. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Yep.
Let me ask you this. Mike Woodson suspended 5 players yesterday.
Yep.
Let's put you in the coach's seat. Jeff Goodman is the coach at Indiana University.
We don't want to do that.
Catches up, or whatever university, and catches 5 players. And we're in the thick of a Big Ten race, 7-5, right there in the middle. Everything seems to be just kind of going down a little bit. Injury to Finney, loss at home to Illinois, and it's just going. What does Jeff Goodman do in that situation when he finds out his players are doing whatever?
I'm going to bring him in and I'm going to go after him. And I am. I mean, like I said, you can't do this time of year. Mm-hmm. And those guys, it wasn't like one was a freshman. Bates, was he the only one that was suspended as a freshman?
Yep.
So I'm not even sure I blame Bates. Like, you're a freshman. You probably followed the other dudes. It's the veterans.
You're right.
It's the veterans to me that like, no, you cannot do this. Mm-hmm. And X has some issues at Pittsburgh.
Okay.
He's been involved, whether it's his fault or not. He's got a little coming from Pitt. Mm-hmm. So you got to be like, especially you want to play ball at the next level. Mm-hmm. You don't need this. You need, and again, be a good leader. Be a good leader. Do the right things. Again, this game meant a ton. Like, we saw what happened to Indiana at the end of last year.
Right.
They were in, I don't know if right now, a year ago, but it wasn't that far off. They were in. And then they had that massive kind of drop off at the end of the year that cost them getting in the NCAA tournament. Well, you lose that game Northwestern. Committee might say, they were without 5 dudes. Now, again, if I'm the committee, I'm saying, well, those dudes were suspended. It wasn't COVID.
Right.
They were suspended. We're not giving them a mulligan for that one. We'll give them a mulligan if it's, COVID or injury or something like that, not for suspension. So now you go to Michigan State and they're going to be hungry. They just lost at home, right to Wisconsin. So they're going to be hungry. They need this game. Mm-hmm. And they're playing it at Breslin, which is a tough place to play. Absolutely. They don't lose 2 there in a row very often.
Right.
So then you're talking about losing 3 straight coming into at home against Wisconsin. And then that becomes like, I don't want to say a must win.
Yeah.
But you're at that point, you're 7-7 in the league. Lose that one, you go to Ohio State. I mean, it becomes a little bit of a must win at home against Wisconsin. It is.
All right.
like, so things can snowball quickly. And you could look back to this game against Northwestern in 2 weeks and say, shit, like if they had just won that one. Now I'm hoping that's not going to be the case. And they can at least kind of split these next, just split them against at Michigan State and Wisconsin at home. And you're fine.
Right.
Honestly, the rest of the year, if you just go 500, you're in. You're in. Just 500 the rest of the way. Don't do that kind of, snowball effect where you go on this losing skid and you can't get out of it, which sometimes teams tend to do in the Big Ten.
Right. And before we get it, I want to ask a little bit about the upper echelon of Big Ten, but I want to kind of go backwards to something you were talking about earlier. You were talking about the book or whatever you were coming out talking about, the former players that struggled as coaches. When you putting this together, what can you say that you pinpoint as the biggest issues with former NBA players getting high profile jobs and not doing well?
So I think there were several things in talking to a lot of the former players who went through this. One was staff, right? One was Fred Hoiberg said that's the most important thing to him. He inherited TJ Otzelberger, who was at Iowa State at the time, coach at Iowa State, but had been a longtime assistant. He also brought on Bob Lutz, former head coach at Charlotte. Yep. So like he knew the type of staff to put together. So staff was one that was very important. Experience was one. Work ethic. Mo Williams, I talked to Mo Williams, who's in his second year as a head coach. And what he said was, listen, as players, we sat in our, like during the day, we would take naps, we would play video games, and people would text us. We didn't get back to them. We didn't want to get bothered as players. Well, now you can't do that. You got to be on all the time. You got to be responding to people, whether it's parents, boosters, players, whoever it is, you're on 24/7. We are not used to that. The most interesting I thought was Damon Stoudemire told me ego. He said, we all got egos, all of us former players, and you got to put those egos aside. Bobby Hurley echoed it. And he said, listen, these kids don't give a shit what we did. He goes, nobody even knew I played at Duke. The parents do, but the kids have no idea I played. But he's like, I can use it for times like, when they go like onto a ball screen or something, like I may use what I did at Duke at times to teach the kids during practice. But he's like, in the recruiting process, they don't want to hear about the stuff I did. Like you got to make it about them is what Damon Stoudemire said. So I thought that was really interesting as well as, so I think work ethic, experience, staff, putting your ego aside are all some of the things, but again, I graded all these dudes. I literally gave everyone a grade. Most of them were not very good. I mean, I didn't give one A of all the current. There's like 20 plus current former players. And again, so Tony Bennett is not eligible.
Okay.
He didn't play. He played about 150 NBA games. Mark Pope, 150 NBA games. Those are two of the better ones. So the best guys right now, like Lorenzo Romar, did a great job at Washington the first half of his career, then struggled a little bit. Now he's at Pepperdine for a second stint there. Juwan Howard did a great job last year. Great job. Did an average job, I thought, his rookie year. They were 10-10 in the Big Ten. And this year they're 500 in the Big Ten again and probably outside looking into the tournament. So, he was like a B plus. But how about that? Not one A among all the current or formers. The best former, Al Skinner, who was here at Boston College.
I remember Al, yeah.
Did you realize that Al played over 350 NBA games?
I didn't know that.
Most people wouldn't.
I didn't know that. I sure did.
So it was interesting, taking a deep dive and looking at all these dudes, the Corliss Williamsons, the Donyell Marshalls, again, the Mark Prices, Chris Mullen was atrocious. There were a lot of ones that did not win. Now, a lot of them have hard jobs too.
Right. Yeah. That's the other part of it. I mean, is what job did you take over?
Totally.
And, I mean, like when you do this grading scale, what are you grading? Like, how are you determining the success or to give a grade?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is what the program has done, what you've done compared to the history of the program.
Gotcha.
Right? Like obviously, Memphis has a pretty proud history, and Penny hasn't gotten to the tournament.
Right. Okay.
Like that's not succeeding to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Patrick Ewing, what he's done at Georgetown, I think has been disastrous. I think he's been awful. I do. I mean, Georgetown to me is one of the best 25 programs in the country. And they've been awful. Absolutely. Right. They're 0-11 this year in the Big East. You know, Fred Hoiberg, like you're 0 in the Big Ten right now. You're 0. Like I know Nebraska's not a great program, but Tim Miles wasn't 0.
Right. Yeah, he wasn't. Man, that's an interesting conversation. I'm here with Jeff Goodman, man, College Basketball Insider. I got a couple more questions for you. Got to get out of here soon. First, you were getting when Indiana first began to hire to replace Archie Miller.
Yeah.
What did you have a former player in mind? Would you have been okay with a different former player, or did you have somebody else in your head that you thought would be a perfect fit for that job?
You know, again, and you know, fans will disagree with me here, but they did go after Chris Holtman. They did. And again, his buyout was too high. I think he might have gone. I don't know. I mean, again, somebody disputed it. I think it was Rab Johns, who's my guy. Right. So he disputed that they ever went after him. I was told they went after him. Greg Doyle also said that they went after Holtman. It doesn't matter at this point. Who cares? They weren't going to get, they didn't get him because of his buyout. His buyout dropped this year. You know, personally at that point, I would have went after Scott Drew.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you could have gotten him, but he's a Midwest guy at heart. You know, nobody has done a better job rebuilding or building a program than Scott Drew at Baylor. Nobody. You know, and you know, you look at how he's done it. You know, he's done it with being able to recruit top guys. He's done it with developing guys. I'm actually going out there this weekend. How about this? So Scott Drew, as you probably know, like my daughter kind of thinks she wants to get into this business.
Right.
I don't know why.
Uh-oh.
I've tried to convince her not to.
Right. I understand that.
And she's leaning towards IU, by the way. She is leaning. She's leaning towards IU. And a funny side note. So it's really between Indiana and Penn State right now. And she did a list of pros and cons. And I told her to do it. I said, you know, go through the list of pros and cons and just kind of, you know, do your research before you make a decision. So at Penn State, you know, pros was the coach likes dad. You know, and at Indiana, it was the fan base doesn't like that.
Right.
I'm like, it's okay. We'll change your last name or something. You'll be fine. But I'm going out to Baylor because Scott Drew, nobody's been better to Talia than Scott Drew, and supportive of her trying to do what she's trying to do. In fact, the day after they win the national title last year, the morning after, he texts her and he says, all right, when are we doing an interview?
Wow.
And they did an interview later that week, and he's been asking us to come out to Waco all year. So I'm going to pull her out of school Friday, and we're going to fly out to Waco for the weekend. He's like, all access for her. I'll probably get no access. AJ.
Right.
But she's going to get all access, whatever. He's texting me last night. I've got surprises for Talia. Like he just, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he's almost too nice to be the head coach at IU. And they might have eaten him up if he didn't do well.
Right.
But man, nobody's done more for a program that doesn't have a lot, which is Baylor. They don't have a lot in terms of resources.
Right.
They don't really care about basketball that much. They're in Waco, Texas, tough place to get to. So I felt like Indiana should have made a run at him. Now, I don't know if probably wouldn't have left after winning a national title.
Right. It was a bad time. And I think he probably stayed at Baylor because he just won, got a good crew coming.
But you might have been able to pay more.
Right.
Like,
true that.
Maybe you could have paid him. To me, if you told Indiana boosters, hey, you could get Scott Drew, we got to raise some serious money here. They might have done it. But I think so many people were just so fed up with the non Bob Knight. They wanted You guys did. The former players did it, and
Yeah.
the older fans did too. Of like, we want to bring back the Bob Knight era and the mystique and the success and all of that. If we're gonna fail again, let's fail with somebody from the Bob Knight era
Right.
instead of some outsider.
Right. That's how I looked at it. I looked at it as you had Mike Davis, and then you had Kelvin Sampson, and then you had Tom Crean, and then you had Archie. I just felt like, all right, it's kind of 1 for 4, and in that we need to bring in somebody that kind of can galvanize the fan base first. You know what I mean? Get them to understand that, while I don't want to see a Bob Knight basketball team. That's not why I wanted a former player. I wanted a former player because I knew the type of fan base that we have, and I knew that they felt that they knew it was time to bring a guy in who can deal with the media, who knew what the Knight standards were, but also we got to be able to move into 2022 and be able to recruit the kids that are potential lottery picks that we're not the 4-year school anymore. And I think people they don't understand that that's what made Bob Knight basketball teams really good, because we were always old. They were always old. They were all. Scott May was a 4-year player. Clint Buckner was 4 years. Steve Alford was 4 years. The only one that wasn't was Isaiah. It's an anomaly. I mean, you get a special player every now and then, but the Ray Tolbert was 4 years. Ted Kitchell was 4 years. And so we get into the 2000s, the late 2000s, where the 4-year player is not 4 years for various reasons. They either go to the NBA or they can transfer whenever they feel like it. So we need a guy that can come in, but keep that fan base at bay, keep them understanding that it's the Indiana way. But we also got to be able to bring a staff in that can recruit those 4 to 5 stars that are potential lottery picks, and be okay with them leaving and be able to retool like we may have to do with the Trace Jackson. We may have to retool. I mean, whether he's ready or not,
he comes back. He's not a first-round pick.
Exactly. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a late second round at best.
Right.
At this point,
he should come back.
I mean, he should be a 4-year player. He should be. But a lot of these players that I see now today that should have came back, they end up leaving and they become.
But get your degree.
Get your
AJ,
degree.
If you're that close, get your degree so you don't have to come back at like 30 years old and have to deal with get it now. You're gonna make probably the same money, and like you said, it's all going to be about timing. Maybe he can get a 2-way contract in the NBA, work his way. He play hard. You're on the right team with the right coach that appreciates you. You get a call up and you can stick. But to me, I almost feel like just get your degree so you don't have to come back and deal with it.
Absolutely. I felt the same way, man. I came my junior year, I could have left. My sophomore year, I could have left. But I just felt like I knew that I wasn't going to come back to school. I was like, I'm almost done. Like, especially after my junior year, there was no doubt in my mind. Like, I don't care what happened. I ain't going. I'm not a school guy. I'm finished. I'm gonna get this degree. So I'm gonna play 10 years at best professionally, either Europe, NBA, whatever it was. And I'll have this degree to be able to come back and work and get a good job. And I think that mindset is completely gone, but we had to bring somebody in that could kind of just bridge the gap. And I think I personally think he's done the exact job that I thought he was going to do. I didn't think we were going to just jump into the upper echelon with Purdue at this moment. Purdue to me was far talent-wise, coaching-wise, was far better than anybody in the league. This at the beginning of the year. Yeah. So now they're showing it, and they've lost 3 games in the league, but they're showing that, it's a lot of parity and anything can happen. But still with that, I didn't think Indiana was that good. I just knew that he would get them in the 5-6 range in the league and be happy with that and build off of that and get better off that for next year. So I think he's done that. Last question I'll ask, man, is, so you talked about grades. Can you tell us are you allowed to tell us what grade you've given Mike Woodson up to this point?
So I didn't give him or Hubert Davis or Mo Williams a grade because they're incompletes.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
It's too early to grade. Okay, I mean, really, anybody in their first, second, even third year, I feel like it's too early to give them, you got to wait till after their third year at the earliest to give anybody a grade. Like, I've seen too much. I mean, Chris Mullen, how about this? In year 2, Chris Mullen, the head coach of St. John's, beat Mike Krzyzewski and Jay Wright in back-to-back games. And everybody was telling me then, well, you're wrong, because I said Mullen was a terrible hire when they hired him. Again, I really didn't like the Mullen one because, again, I didn't like the Ewing one. Those two, Penny was a little different because he had coached AAU in high school. Stackhouse was a little different. I didn't like his, after he hired his staff, I thought it was a terrible hire. But he had been around the AAU. He had an AAU program, Stackhouse Elite, and I had seen him out in the circuit. So I was like, maybe he gets it. But to me, you know, I think you can't fully evaluate because, like I said, Chris Mullen, even Ewing last year, right? Ewing made the NCAA tournament. Well, they got lucky. They made a run in the Big East tournament. But other than that, they've been completely irrelevant for 4 years. So, and again, listen, nobody roots for these guys more than me. I grew up loving Patrick Ewing, Chris Mullen, Penny Hardaway. I've been around Penny a bunch. He's a great dude. Great dude. That doesn't mean he's a great coach.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't have the other thing. I don't know if I went through this with you, but I think I did. The experience of what Bobby Hurley said was, listen, I was an assistant coach for my brother at Wagner in Rhode Island before I got the head job at Buffalo. All right. So first of all, he got a mid-major head job when he got one. Number two, he had spent 3 years as an assistant coach. Like Juwan Howard never did that. And Juwan's done fine. But like these other guys never did that. They also, the elite ones, the Ewings, the Pennies, the Mullins, what Hurley said was, I was a great college player, but I was kind of a mediocre. He got hurt. I was kind of a mediocre NBA player at some point. He said, I can relate to the guy 8th through 13th on the bench because that's what I was in the NBA. Juwan Howard, think about it. He can relate to all of it. He was a great player when he started. By the end of it, he was like the OG. He was like Udonis Haslem, the old guy who was at the end of the bench, who was more teaching the younger guys. So he's actually been in every role as a player in the league. So he can relate to everybody on a college team.
Awesome, man. Hey, and one more thing. Can you tell us, you know, I see your list, your fan base list.
Yeah.
I'd like to know at this point, where Indiana fan base, the greatest fan base in America, where do we stand on Jeff Goodman's current Indiana worst fan base list?
If Talia goes there, they're off the list completely.
They're off the list, right?
They're off the list completely. We got to flip this thing.
Right.
I do think she's going to end up going to Indiana. I really do. And I couldn't be happier. You know, we were out there visiting in October and 70 degrees. And it's funny because generally when I go to schools, I'm not walking around the campuses. I'm going to the practices. I'm going to the games. I might go out with coaches or something like that. So I've kind of seen the campus a little bit, but not really walked the whole campus. It is beautiful. The area around. I mean, I would be ecstatic if Talia chooses to go to Indiana. They're going out there in early March for something for kids who got admitted. And then she'll make her decision because I kind of told her to just wait, slow down, because I think she was ready to make a decision like 2 weeks ago. But yeah, listen, I get it. Fans are fans. I totally get it. They didn't like what I said. I had a lot of data to support what I said.
Okay.
It wasn't about Mike Woodson. It was more, again, about those former NBA guys who came in without any knowledge of college basketball and what it takes and how different it is and how you've got to be on the phone all day, every day. You know, it's just different. When you leave in the NBA, I've talked to Brad Stevens about it plenty. He says, like, when I drive home after practice, NBA, when I was coaching, nobody calls me. I'm looking for people to call. Like nobody calls me. Where in college, you better be on the phone, I don't know, 24/7, but close to it, talking to recruits, talking to AU guys, dealing with kids, dealing with academics, whatever it is, there's always something to do.
Right.
And that's always what's kind of worried me with a lot of these guys coming over. But Woody's a little different than some of these guys that made $100+ million, that honestly, it's not their livelihood. For Woody, the other difference is it's a chance, not that it wasn't for Ewing and Penny, it is, but like it's your alma mater. So you want to pour everything you have into it to get it to a point. You have that pride in your alma mater that you want to get it back.
Right.
Right.
Yep. I was never worried about Woody, man. Professionalism, just meeting him a few times I've met him.
Tell Eddie Johnson. Hey, tell
Yeah.
Eddie Johnson on Twitter to lay off me a little bit.
Okay, man. EJ.
Wow.
I saw that, man. I mean,
he's coming at me.
When you get to digging this, unearthing this, you're gonna get the heat, man. You're gonna get those guys because they look at it as their current livelihood. Although they made 100 million back in the day, this is an opportunity for them to do something special. And then, when it's unearthed that, you bring the statistics with it, it's like, okay, that's the enemy at the end of the day. He's trying to, trying to put a false, what they feel is a false narrative out there.
But if you put data with it, how false is it if you're putting data with it?
I would say that you created your own rubric to it. You know what I mean? Like you put the 200 games on it. You put, I mean? I could say that, just being devil's advocate. When we got on this show, I was surprised we talked about it. So I wasn't prepared to really think about it or talk about it, but I'm thinking about it. And that's the only thing I would say is, like, you put your own rubric on it. They'll say, well, when you said, well, the other two guys that are successful that play, Tony Bennett, it's like, well, that could add to, the positive of the data if you allowed it to. So, and I've heard that before, but I haven't been in that space. I only played 90 games in the NBA, so it don't, I might've been a great college coach, who knows, but, I just, I understand both sides of it. I allow people to state their opinions and give. I don't look at a person who's anti whatever and say, you're gone forever. You're done. Everybody has an opinion. You got data.
They're outliers.
Whatever.
I think they're outliers with everything, right? Like, again, Juwan's done a really good job so far.
Right.
Well, that makes it cooler to be able to hire that former NBA guy. Like, for a while, it was like, these guys aren't doing well. Then Juwan has some success. It's the same thing in the NBA. College coaches going to the NBA, right? Like, a lot of these guys, Billy Donovan's having success right now. Brad Stevens had success for a while. So, okay. But before that, you had some Hoiberg didn't do well. A lot of these other former college coaches didn't do well in the league. So then it becomes this kind of thing of like, well, you can't hire a college guy in the NBA. They don't know.
Yeah, I understand. So I know you got to go, man. But are you going to attend an Indiana game anytime soon?
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to get out there, to be honest. I'd really like to get out there for Talia and take her to a game. I don't know yet. I mean, we're at the stretch drive. I mean, we only got 3 weeks left. I know March 5th, AJ, I got to be at Duke for Coach K's final home game against Carolina. I know that. I know I got to go to Waco with my daughter. I've really prioritized her as much as anything this year. That's why we came to Indiana before the season started. Right. Did a bunch of those. Maybe I come to the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, I'm thinking in terms of the IU fan base being ready for you. Like,
well, I think next year,
welcoming you.
Hopefully, I'm visiting her next year several times at IU. That's the goal. Right. The goal would be coming out there several times. Hopefully, she's not a homesick freshman if she goes there. But I know. Hopefully, we got some people that'll take care of her on campus.
Yeah, we definitely.
Our guy Austin Render will.
Yeah,
we'll definitely take care of her. I have confidence that Austin will take care of her, so I think we'll be okay.
IU fans are good people. They'll take care of her. They just love the Twitter banner. They love to go back and forth.
Everybody does.
They're super emotional, but I love them to death, man, because I'd rather have a fan base that's active and involved than one that just don't care about anything.
Totally.
I
have fun with it. I really don't take it personally at all. In fact, if you're creative in how you hammer me, like, to me, that's all in good fun. Just don't come after my wife or daughter.
Family. Family is excluded.
Correct. You do that, I'm gonna probably come after you. Like, you do that, you don't want me to find out where you work or any of that crap, because I will. I mean, you don't go after family. Right, you come after me, I can take all of it.
It's just
take all of it. Bring it up. I'm okay with that.
Once again, man, college insider Jeff Goodman joining the House of Hoosier podcast. I want to thank him for taking his time, and we look forward to seeing how this thing ends up, the Big Ten race ends up, and where Indiana falls in the NCAA tournament, man. We got a lot of work to do. Don't want everybody to think it's a solid done deal. Few tough games coming up, so we really have to stand pat and support the Hoosiers. But thank you for joining, Jeff.
You got it, AJ. Thanks for having me, man.